Hey, Halloween is now a week and a half away, and so I, Zach Wolf, am going to do another Berenstain Bears comparison of sorts, naturally involving an episode I just made a YouTube poop of. But this time it's almost like a recursive adaptation. It involves a 1985 episode of CBS's Berenstain Bears Saturday morning cartoon, The Spookiest Pumpkin. While it doesn't specifically mention Halloween, it's obviously tied into that holiday. I mean, pumpkin carving and jack-o'-lanterns are just so synonymous with Halloween. The plot involves Papa Bear learning of Bear Country holding a Spookiest Pumpkin contest and, being the bumbling competitive fodder he is, plans to carve the scariest jack-o'-lantern from one of the pumpkins in his patch. Yeah, in the 80s series, Papa actually has his own big pumpkin patch, along with the 1980 NBC Thanksgiving special, The Berenstain Bears Meet Big Paw. Compare that to in the 1990 first-time book, The Prize Pumpkin, and when that was adapted into the 2000s PBS animated series of Papa indeed having a smaller pumpkin patch, and being offended at Farmer Ben calling it a little pumpkin patch. Of course, that's also a story about Papa being competitive with pumpkins, but it's a Thanksgiving story, and right now I'm talking about Halloween. But Papa is still obsessed with competing with pumpkins. Now, a handful of episodes from the 1980s TV series did indeed get turned into books later on. A couple of them being first-time reader poetic books, 4 of them being adapted into McDonald's Happy Meal exclusive Berenstain Bears books, and a few of them becoming big chapter books featuring the Bear Scouts. But the Spookiest Pumpkin's basic story and lesson didn't get adapted until nearly 20 years later. Well after the Berenstain Bears left Random House for HarperCollins, a subsidiary of News Corp. The book in question is one of the last ones Stan Berenstain had some involvement with before his death. The Berenstain Bears Go On a Ghost Walk. These particular books follow the first-time book formula still, down to the opening poem. In this case, the opening poem is, "Nothing makes a grown-up bear feel more like a cub than ghosts and monsters and lots of Halloween hubbub." Now, it also applies to grown-up wolves like me, too. The story opens with Papa Bear saying that he's always loved Halloween. From trick-or-treating when he was a cub, to haunted hayrides when he was a teen, to giving out treats to the trick-or-treaters. And then the event Papa starts to get really excited about here. Papa is going to be putting on the Bear Country School's Ghost Walk event. Even if it's for a good cause, and Papa is glad about that. But he's way more excited about the fact that it's a Halloween event. And Mama says she hopes Papa won't let himself get carried away. But Papa says, "My dear, that's what Halloween is all about, getting carried away." There's a similar exchange between the two in the Spookiest Pumpkin TV episode.
Now, Papa, you're getting a bit carried away. Certainly no need to go overboard.
You bet I'm going overboard. I fully intend to get carried away.
And then after that comes a scene relating to a common criticism with this particular animated version of the Berenstain Bears.
We're going to pick our pumpkins, so we can enter the contest too.
Not so fast. If I let you two have pumpkins, it'll mean more competition for the prize. And
Papa, keeping your own cubs out of the contest?
Yeah, this series made Papa way more bumbling than in the books, along with being kind of antagonistic at times. In fact, this is Stan Berenstain's only real complaint with that animated series. And despite him and Jan not being involved with the 2000s animated series by Nelvana, he appreciated it keeping Papa's character truer to his and Jan's books. So at least there's that. Then in this book, Papa, brother, and sister bear buy stuff they need at the party goods store for the Ghost Walk. I like this mask here. Even if it's implied to be one of those cheaper front face ones with the elastic or strap to hold onto your head. I can't tell if it's a fox or a crimson-colored wolf. And then they go to Farmer Ben's pumpkin patch so they can stock up on pumpkins for carving into jack-o'-lanterns for the ghost walk. And here's where a bit of similarity to the Spookiest Pumpkin episode comes even more into play. In the episode, Papa Bear dismisses Farmer Ben's misshapen pumpkins left in his patch, since Ben's good pumpkins, like on this page here, got sold to the pumpkin pie factory. Wouldn't bakery be a more appropriate term? And while Papa thinks said misshapen pumpkins wouldn't have a chance in a pumpkin carving contest, in this book, Papa specifically wants those kind of pumpkins to carve into the spookiest jack-o'-lanterns. So I guess there's another way to really change Papa's character in the 80s animated series, not for the best. And then both involve Papa Bear beginning to prepare the pumpkins for carving, complete with mentioning how gross scooping out the insides is. Since the cubs aren't there to be repulsed like in this amusing book illustration. As in the TV episode, Papa wants to work in complete privacy, getting too paranoid and competitive compared to his character in the book. Even more so than he did in the prize pumpkin. And the jack-o'-lantern he ends up carving in the book, it does look even spookier in a TV episode, with Papa combining a few different ideas that end up scaring himself a bit. But in this book, Papa doesn't scare himself with jack-o'-lanterns. But rather, he spooks the cubs by scooping up gobs of pumpkin innards and pretending to be a pumpkin monster, chasing the cubs around. Now, I understand Papa's just playing around, but for once, the cubs are actually scared and crying for help. Maybe they're just really repulsed by the raw pumpkin innards. And so this is where Mama scolds Papa for doing so, even though Papa dismisses it as it's all in fun. But Mama says, maybe so, but try to remember, one person's fun is another person's nightmare. She sure got that right. And Papa just brushes it off as saying that Halloween is supposed to be scary. When Mama brings the cubs inside to get ready for bed, Papa groans, "Gee whiz, nobody wants to have fun anymore. Everything's got to be all nicey nice, goody two-shoes. Well, I'll show them." Of course, it's one of the occasions Papa Bear's slight man-child tendencies show. Something the 80s animated series really played up. And also maybe a semi-commentary on how politically correct and kid-friendly Halloween can now seem to some people. Indeed, roughly half the Halloween costumes I've seen out there nowadays aren't even scary related. But I'd still see plenty of kids disguising as serial killers and popular movie or TV monsters to go trick-or-treating. Especially since today we've got a lot more kids into horror stuff than before. But at least this is better than Papa getting increasingly paranoid in the TV episode. After finishing his pumpkin, he thinks he hears someone trying to get a peek at his work, or worse, steal it. He's even suspicious of Mr. and Mrs. Bella Bat, new characters created for the show, complete with them speaking in Transylvanian accents due to the association bats have with vampires, with Frank Welker even doing his distinct Bela Lugosi impression.
Oh, it's really very fine, Mr. Bear. But you must remember, we are professionals.
And while Papa realizes the bats don't want to steal his pumpkin, he's still worried someone else might, and so he sets a trap. Meanwhile, brother and sister decide to enter the pumpkin contest anyway, but in different categories, for the funniest and prettiest pumpkin, respectively, while Papa sticks with spookiest. On the book, this is what one of Papa's spooky jack-o'-lanterns look like, putting one in every classroom where they're ghost walking. Kinda freaky, but nowhere as freaky as the pumpkin he carved in the TV episode. And Papa and the cubs elaborately decorate the school for Halloween, even making dummies of monsters of bear literature, including the Frankie Bear monster and Grisula and a bear mummy, along with playing a spooky laugh sound effect tape over the school speaker system. Yeah, even though this is from 2005, they use cassette tapes instead of CDs or digital audio files. Maybe the PA system was so old it didn't have the means to play compact discs. I mean, I've seen many older public school buildings in the 2000s still use such old building systems, including even my high school I was attending then. Then the night before the ghost walk, the cubs try on their costumes. of course, not surprisingly, this sister is going to be a princess, with brother is going to be Super Bear, and baby Honey is an angel, thus cementing Papa Bear's thesis that everything now has to be all nicey nice goody two-shoes when it comes to Halloween. So naturally, Papa tries his hardest to look scary by dressing up as Black Bear the Pirate, the meanest, scariest, bloodthirstiest pirate ever to sail the seas. Okay, I could see the sudden appearance of him jumping out like that being enough to make baby Honey cry, but the narration says brother and sister are terrified. They honestly look more mildly startled by his appearance. That bloody sword is probably the only scary thing about his costume, since it looks kind of realistic here. So Mama has to repeat her message to Papa on how one person's fun can be another person's nightmare. And Papa has to repeat he feels it's all in fun and shows how his costume accessories work. And so naturally the Cubs are really fascinated by it. Hopefully Papa's able to hide the support on the trick sword with fake blood, like creating slits in his shirt to conceal the support. So if he's seen at another angle besides this one, it doesn't give him away. But then in both of these stories, the night before the event, Papa Bear has a nightmare involving at least one of the creepy things he was working on, coming alive and chasing him. In the TV episode, Papa initially dreams about becoming monster-like with his competitive streak, before zooming in like a commercial or logo. And then a scary pumpkin comes to life, complete with vine limbs, and then the scooped out pumpkin innards also come to life. Crazy! In the book, Papa dreams about all the ghoulish creatures and animals from his decorating the school, including a pumpkin monster like in the TV version, and a gloppy pumpkin innard monster like when he teases Cubs earlier. Look at how Papa's face there looks kind of like a Muppet in the dream. Then Papa wakes up in a big catapult nightmare fashion, screaming, "Yay!" startling Mama awake in the process. But in the Spookiest Pumpkin episode, as part of that show playing up Papa's bumbling personality to the point of antagonism, Papa's dream turns into a full-blown night terror, ending up running out of the house in his pajamas and into his workshop, where he ends up destroying his creepy jack-o'-lantern by accident, smashes through the door, and snared in his own trap, where he finally comes to.
Winning isn't everything. It's the only thing.
The Cubs even initially think Papa's night terror is amusing until he starts causing damage. While in the book, they are more understanding as Papa quickly learns his lesson. He stammers, "I think I see what you mean about fun and nightmares." And so that following evening, Papa decides to leave his trick dagger and sword with the fake blood at home when he hosts the ghost walk. And he and the others have a fine, spooky time. But in the Spookiest Pumpkin episode, Papa somehow got a head injury from his night terror and ends up missing out in the pumpkin carving contest. But he does, upon seeing brother and sister won the funniest and prettiest pumpkin awards at the contest. Papa ends up actually proud of his Cubs, and then the Bats stop by to read a poem they wrote.
Bear Country Moral. Here's a little lesson you may not learn at school. Don't try too hard to win the prize, lest you earn the title Prize Fool.
Isn't it marvelous?
And while Papa is ashamed of what he did, the rest of the family is glad he learned his lesson. And so there you have it. The way an original story written for the 1985 Berenstain Bears TV series, The Spookiest Pumpkin, was loosely reworked into a Halloween book 20 years after it was made. It's mostly the main lesson about not getting carried away with spooky Halloween hubbub and Papa's actions, leading to a scary nightmare, along with a few minor elements, like when Papa was carving the jack-o'-lanterns for the ghost walk. Now keep in mind, Stan and Jan Berenstain did indeed come up with a story for the Spookiest Pumpkin, even though Robbie Gorin was the one who made the teleplay out of it. And so it's possible they, along with their son Mike Berenstain, did indeed take some elements from it when writing Go On a Ghost Walk. With that said, Stan and Jan did indeed come up with the stories for all the episodes of the 80s Saturday morning cartoon, and even also wrote the teleplay for some of the episodes. But of course, they still had to deal with the CBS executives, like the addition of new characters and also coming with some cartoony plots, often involving Rapish Ralph ripoff and or his friend Weasel McGreed. Even though Ralph was created for the TV show, he too soon migrated over to the books. From a cameo in the aforementioned Spookiest Pumpkin Thanksgiving story that removed his appearance when Nelvana adapted in that story to the 2000s animated series, to being a recurring antagonist in the Berenstain Bears chapter books. There's also how CBS allegedly rejected having the books Too Much TV and Too Much Junk Food being adapted into the cartoon, even though both were later adapted into the Nelvana PBS series, but again largely without Stan and Jan's involvement. There's also how Too Much Birthday and No Girls Allowed started out as episodes in the first season from 1985, before their books were published in early to mid-1986. But in that case, it's likely Stan and Jan wrote those two as books from the start, and decided to also try out the stories as TV episodes, while simultaneously working on said books, just so CBS would have a couple episodes they could air. Generally, that series had kind of a basic formula. The first segment in the half hour would be a reassuring story relating to common childhood experiences or some other valuable life lesson. And the second segment would be an exciting adventure story of some kind, like the ones often involving Rapish Ralph or whatever. So at least that was a fair compromise from the Berenstains. As keep in mind, this was from before the Children's Television Act was passed in the 1990s, requiring such wholesome and educational content. The EI in that standing for educational and informative. Also be included some kind of kids programming block on network or syndicated television. The kind of content Stan and Jan Berenstain were aiming to make from the start. Fittingly enough, over 20 years ago, when Deke Enterprises and Tribune Entertainment had the Deke Kids Network syndication package designed to meet such EI requirements, and the 80s Berenstain Bears series was rerun on some channels as part of that package, as it did indeed qualify with the EI requirements, even though Deke edited and time compressed the episodes like crazy, even going as far as to remove all logos and references to Hanna-Barbera Australia to make it look like Deke made it themselves. Jeez! But I hope you liked this little Halloween video from me relating to my newest YouTube poop. And so keep watching this channel for whatever comes up next during this wonderful time of year. Also, don't forget about my Ko-Fi if you're willing to support me there.